Taoiseach, national inquiries are sometimes necessary to get to the bottom of past wrongdoing. They can be cold processes as they plough through mountains of documentation and testimonies, and they can be painfully slow. The original Tuam Babies inquiry was meant to last 3 years. Then it was 4. Now we understand 5. Those affected by this scandal are frustrated beyond words. Many of those affected are elderly. Some have died. They want closure so they can have some resolution to this aspect of their lives. As you know, for nearly 40 years, the Home, as it was called, was involved in illegal adoptions of children to America, also in the illegal burial of hundreds of children who died in the Home and who were interred in a mass grave without proper funerals. Those are the stark facts. And we do need an inquiry to identify what exactly was the role of the Sisters of the Bon Secours and to what extent were state agencies involved. The arts, too, is another way to provide us with a mechanism to understand and, more importantly, to feel the emotional impact and trauma of the Tuam Mother and Baby Home. I attended the Stay With Me exhibition at the Inspire Gallery in Dublin last week. The exhibition was of artwork created by people moved by the Tuam Baby story. Words can't convey the depth and strength of the feelings involved in those artworks, and they give us a glimpse of how those centrally affected must feel. But the aim of the exhibition was not to cause horror or revulsion, but to show love, to help people come to terms with the terrible losses that they've endured. I understand that the inquiry needs to proceed to a 5th year. The Department of Health has apparently produced a new batch of documentation which needs to be examined. I have to ask why this documentation was not forthcoming at the outset when it was asked for, when all agencies were asked to produce everything that they had. The continued inquiry may be necessary, but that doesn't mean that those affected must wait another year for some resolution. Do we not have enough evidence now, Taoiseach, to show that there was wrongdoing? So will the government agree to now provide redress for those affected, many of whom are elderly and who deserve our compassion and a resolution to their pain as far as we can provide it, but they need it now? If we don't act now, for some, it will be too late. It's already too late for those survivors who have passed away in the 4 years since the inquiry began.
Deputy Howlin, I want to thank you for observing the time. Taoiseach.
I always do.
Thanks, Deputy. As you'll be aware, the Government has granted a request by the Commission of Investigation into Mother and Baby Homes to extend the time frame for its delivery of reports by 1 year. So the Commission is now due to submit its final report by 2020. And I know you've acknowledged that we have to allow the Commission, which is independent, to do its work. At the same time, I think we all need to acknowledge and understand the enormous frustration that's being felt by former residents of mother and baby homes who will have to wait longer than any of us had anticipated to get some answers to some of their questions. As I understand it, the Commission, having not completed its work, isn't obviously able to make findings of fact at this stage or findings of wrongdoing. For example, while they've met 519 former residents, 26 have yet to have their story heard, and it's important that they have their story heard. There's new material which has been received which needs to be considered, and more than 100,000 pages of documents. So there's a lot of work still to be done by the Commission, though they have assured the Minister and Government that they can do it by February next year, and they can do it within their existing budget. There will, however, be a report on the 15th of March, only a few weeks away now, on the burials, and that will be a comprehensive report. So hopefully that will at least give us some answers between now and then. And I know the Minister, who's been very involved with the consultative group, is examining ways as to how we may be able to give former residents of the mother and baby homes some forms of health and well-being supports in the interim while we wait for the final 3 reports of the Commission next year. And that's currently being examined by the Minister and will be brought to Government as soon as it's ready.
Deputy Howlin.
Taoiseach, how is it that all this new volume of documents has suddenly come to light 4 years into the inquiry and has now just been submitted by the Department of Health? Have you asked why this would be? Everybody was asked to provide every document from the beginning. And this is not the first inquiry where that tardiness, to put it at its kindest, has come to light. Can I ask you, Taoiseach, not to wait, but to actually formally apologise on behalf of the state and all of us to those who suffered in those mother and baby homes, and to do it this week, and to provide redress now of the kind you're talking about being examined, but to do it now, before it's too late for people who are elderly. I met people who were affected at that art exhibition, and it would move you to tears to listen to their anguish and the desperate frustration that this thing is going on and on. And finally, can I ask you in relation to, are there other graves that are being examined? Or is Tuam one awful, unique situation?
Taoiseach, 1 minute.
Thanks. Deputy, I don't need to wait for the reports to be published next year to offer my sorrow and regret and that of the government for all that happened to women in the mother and baby homes and the children who were born there. Many had very negative experiences, and I think we as a government, as a state and as a parliament are very sorry for all of that. And I know that Taoiseach, prior to me, and Kenny, made a similar statement in that regard in the past. But we do need to allow the Commission of Investigation to do its work, to do it properly, to study all the documents, to have the hearings, to make findings of fact. And I think that's the whole point of setting up these commissions, is to allow them to do their work. But as I say, Minister Zappone, with the support of government, is examining means by which we may be able to provide some health and wellbeing support to former residents while they wait and while we wait the final report. In terms of the the burial sites, as I say, we expect a comprehensive report by the middle of March 2019. The ones obviously being examined, of course, are Tuam, Sean Ross and Ross Cray, and I think Vesper as well.
Very good.